Hi there, Kiwi Codger here, and thanks for joining me for episode 42 entitled The Battle of Motunui, Part 1, the Hunuhunu. This battle also is referred to as the Battle of Mangatiti. So this episode follows on directly from episode 39. Now, the Amiowhenua are under siege at Pukerangiora Pā. Word of the siege has reached to Wherowhero at his Kaitotahi Pā near Wherowhero. A large Waikato force has assembled on the northern bank of the Potatau river mouth, ready to proceed south and teach the once friendly Taranaki tribes a lesson and relieve the siege at Pukerangiora Pā. For this episode, I'll again use Peter Hurunui's King Potatau and W.H Skinner's version in the Journal of the Polynesian Society. These and other references are put below. Now, Pei is Ngāti Maniapoto, so his version is from the Waikato side. W.H Skinner would have been told his version from Kaumātua of the Taranaki region, so his account reflects their version. I've melded the two versions into something that I feel could have happened. I encourage you to read both the references and make up your own mind. Now, Pei estimates the Waikato army to be 1,000 strong. Skinner states that it's between 2,000 and 6,000 strong. My feeling is probably around the lower end of Skinner's estimate, let's say 2,000 to 3,000. So the Waikato army, under the supreme command of Te Wherowhero, crosses the Mokau at dawn on a brisk spring morning in probably sometime in November 1821. They have a 28-kilometre march to the Pukerangiora Pā at the northern end of Waiheke Beach. Intelligence informs them that this part is abandoned. The route takes them past the Ngāti Tamapa to Kawau. They are hoping for no trouble here. Now, as an aside, at this time, a large force of Ngāti Tama warriors are on a war expedition inland at Ongurue under the command of Te Kaiaia. The inhabitants at Kawau, being depleted of many warriors, stay put and watch the Waikato forces pass beneath and around them. A further 4-hour march along bush and beach brings the army off the beach and past Pukerangiora Pā. This part is the home of Ngāti Tama paramount chief Te Puoho. He's been aware of the Waikato army gathering at the Mokau, and one day prior, his hapu abandons Pukerangiora and retires to Okoki Pā, 16 kilometres south, the agreed focal point of resistance. The Waikato army reaches Pukerangiora Pā mid-afternoon. They occupy the pā and prepare food and make preparations for the coming night. A messenger is dispatched to Pukerangiora Pā to take word that the relief force is on the way. The route that this messenger takes is not described. My feeling is that he probably went by canoe to well south of the Waitra, then made his way inland and somehow manages to get into the doubly fortified pā at Pukerangiora. In history, he gets bugger all credit for this amazing feat. At the Pukerangiora Pā, Apahai Te Kawau, Tukurehu, and the Ngāti Rangatarangi, the Aotearoa hapu of Pukerangiora that has sheltered the Amiowhenua, are elated. They have been penned up for over 6 months. The Taranaki besiegers have been aware of the Waikato army assembling at the Mokau. Now that it's on the move, big decisions are made. Many return to their hapu and make arrangements for their safety. All available warriors make the journey to Okoki Pā to prepare for war. A small number continue the siege. All of Waikato is in a frenzy of preparation. Momentous times are at hand. Te Reo Paraha and his people abandon their pā at Te Kaweka and make the short journey across the wooded plains of Motunui to Okoki Pā. All this day, people are streaming into Okoki Pā. Warriors are prioritised, with excess women and children being sent to other pā. The paramount chief of Ngāti Mutanga, Rangiwahia, takes overall command of the Taranaki forces. A meeting of chiefs of the Taranaki Iwi, including Te Reo Paraha, occurs. Strategies are discussed. Fallback positions are decided. Other pā are informed. Now, the distance from Okoki Pā to Pukerangiora Pā, where the Waikato are overnighting, is 10 kilometres, a mere 2-hour march. If Waikato decamp at dawn, the Taranaki forces can be expected shortly thereafter. Relays of scouts are keeping Rangiwahia informed of Waikato's movements. At Okoki Pā, preparations continue into the night. Food supplies and water are gathered. The possibility of a siege is planned for. Little sleep is had by the Taranaki Iwi. It will be a big day tomorrow. The sun rises to a cloudless November day. Both sides see this as being auspicious. The Waikato army is in no rush. The possibility of fighting today is high. They are in territory where the enemy has the advantage. They will eat well before setting off. This will likely be their only meal till evening. Scouts are sent south to assess the enemy's position and strength. Te Wherowhero awaits their return. By late morning, the scouts return. Te Wherowhero and his father, Te Reo Anga, are advised of the strength at Okoki Pā. A meeting of Waikato chiefs occur. Pushing through to Pukerangiora Pā this day is abandoned. Some chiefs are eager to engage Okoki Pā this afternoon. Te Wherowhero decides that the best strategy is to move the army closer to Okoki Pā, camp for the night, then be ready for whatever confrontations may develop. The scouts advise the mouth of the Waitoitoi stream, 2.5 kilometres from the Okoki Pā, as a good campsite. The Waikato army sets off after midday. They are in no hurry. The Taranaki scouts arrive back at Okoki Pā and advise of the army's movements. Runners keep arriving at Okoki Pā with updates. As the Waikato army reaches the mouth of the Waitoitoi stream, it is clearly visible from the summit of Okoki Pā. The tension in the Pā escalates. It is apparent that the Waikato army has stopped and appears to be encamping. This is confirmed by scouts. Rangiwahia calls a meeting of his chiefs. It is Te Reo Paraha that suggests the ancient feint of the Hunuhunu strategy. Now, this is such a common strategy that amazes me that it works so well so often. The Hunuhunu strategy uses a small number of very fit warriors to launch a small attack, then flee and draw the enemy on a long pursuit to tire them, at which point an ambush is sprung. This is a low-risk, high-gain strategy. All the chiefs agree to it. The attack location, the escape route, and the ambush position is agreed. The attack squad of 80 young, hand-picked warriors sets off. The ambush force of veteran warriors are in two groups, one led by Rangiwahia, the other by Te Reo Paraha. They only have a short distance to go, and so depart later. Meanwhile, the encampment by Waikato at Waitoitoi River is well underway. There are disgruntled factions that wanted to engage the enemy this afternoon, but here they are with everyone else gathering toi and flax for their shelter and readying the evening meal. The excitement of entering enemy territory has been replaced with domestic chores. The Hunuhunu attack force positioned themselves on a nearby bluff to observe the Waikato camp and work out their attack plan. It is 2 hours before dusk. They make their way down into the riverbed and move quietly towards the eastern extreme of the camp. The flax and toi give them cover. They race across the last 20 metres and engage the startled warriors in a silent attack. The Waikato warriors are taken by complete surprise. Many fall. A fierce engagement occurs at the edge. Nearby warriors, seeing what is happening, join the fray. A deadly battle ensues. But now, as more Waikato join, the noise of battle spreads. Waikato start to dominate. A hubbub ripples through the Waikato camp. It is time to begin the retreat. Members of the Hunuhunu force break off and start their retreat. But then the panicked retreat begins in earnest. Have they been good enough to sell this to Waikato? On looking back, they see they are being chased, with the pursuers being beautifully strung out as more and more Waikato become aware of what is happening and join the chase. After a minute or two, the more fleet-footed amongst the Waikato begin catching the tail of the pursued, who turn and prepare to sell their lives dearly. By now, all of the Waikato camp is streaming along the flax-covered riverbed. Te Wherowhero has little control of events. Things are just happening. He suspects that this may be a Hunuhunu, but there is little to be done but let events play out. His squad joins the pursuit. The chase continues up the Waitoitoi River. About 1,700 metres, the pursued clamber out of the riverbed and cross into the Mangatiti stream and gully, which runs down to Okoki Pā, about 1 kilometre away. The 60 Hunuhunu survivors are elated as they race along the last 300 metres of the Mangatiti gully, knowing that on the southerly slope, amongst the toi and bracken, is the waiting ambush. They have actually pulled it off. Te Reo Paraha smiles from the cover as the Taranaki, then the Waikato warriors stream past. Rangiwahia and his party ready themselves. The trap is about to close. Just below Okoki Pā, the pursued finally stop, turn, catch their breath and form up for battle. Those in Okoki Pā have a spectacular view of the events about to unfold below them. The fastest Waikato warriors begin advancing into their prey. A bloody battle begins and grows as more Waikato warriors arrive, many Waikato chiefs amongst them. From cover, Rangiwahia awaits his moment. At the raising of his tefa, the few musketeers in his party rise and fire a volley into the Waikato pursuers. A number fall, but the shock is great. Rangiwahia signals the attack and charge down the slope into the enemy. Te Reo Paraha awaits his moment. When enough Waikato are opposite him, he rises with his musketeers. They fire. His warriors charge into the Waikato. The musketeers reload. Waikato are heavily outnumbered in this zone, and within seconds, the enormity of their position is apparent. The sound from a conch shell is heard. Taranaki break off, retreat up the slope. Another volley rips into Waikato. Back down the slope they go. Bodies begin littering the gully and creek. As more Waikato arrive, the situation only gets worse. The conch shell is heard again. Disengage. Another volley. Re-engage. Reload. Waikato are desperately fighting in a killing zone and need to escape. At the third disengagement, those Waikato that can break and run. This begins the rout. The only thought is self-preservation. Meanwhile, most of the Waikato army, including Te Wherowhero, are strung out along the Waitoitoi riverbed and Mangatiti Gully, now in a rather wary pursuit. The fleeing Waikato create hesitancy in the advancing army, which falters and little by little begins joining the panic. It is becoming a disaster. Rangiwahia and his warriors are left to mop up the wounded and kill the trapped. Te Reo Paraha and his warriors now become the pursuers and set off after the fleeing Waikato. Since commencement of the battle in front of Okoki Pā, less than 10 minutes have passed. This has been an almost perfect execution of a Hunuhunu. Those in the Okoki Pā are going off. The home team is having one of their best days ever. There's a lot of mana still up for grabs this day. Okay, this is an excellent place to conclude this episode, because shortly after this stage of the battle, an event that is famous in Maritime occurs and will need its own episode. Now, I've done a bit of droning footage of the Hunuhunu route to play whilst I explain the Hurunui and W.H Skinner's variants from my version. Now, I have to confess that I have sexed up my account a bit. Mind you, with what I consider to be reasonably logical extrapolations and interpolations. So let's just have a quick look at Pā and Skinner's account. Both Pā and Skinner agree that the Hunuhunu occurred and was fought in the Mangatiti Gully almost in front of the Okoki Pā, and the occupants had a good view of it. Both accounts agree that Waikato were defeated in the battle and fled. Skinner names Whakarewa Pā and Waitoitoi River mouth as the Waikato camps. The route of the Hunuhunu is described by Pā as a riverbed. Skinner is somewhat silent on the actual route. The Waitoitoi riverbed and then into the Mangatiti is the obvious route. The only chief on the Taranaki side that Pā mentions by name is Te Reo Paraha, which is unusual, as Te Reo Paraha is only a guest amongst the Taranaki tribes. Skinner mentions quite a number of chiefs, in particular Rangiwahia as the commander of the Taranaki forces. Skinner intimates that Te Reo Paraha was in the Hunuhunu party. Now, this is unlikely, as he's around 50 years of age at this time, so really not fast enough. However, he does feature soon after the retreat begins, so I have put him in with the ambush party. Muskets having been used is common to both accounts, but not in the way I have told. Pā refers to a shot from the Pā that hits a Waikato chief called Mama. Also, Pā refers to a Taranaki musketeer, probably from the ambush party, who readies to shoot Te Wherowhero. That's for the next episode. Skinner refers to the first blood going to a musketeer on the Taranaki side. He also states that Te Hiaki of Waikato had a musket. You get the impression that there may have been a dozen or so muskets involved in the battle. Now, Pā's account says that some impatient Waikato hapu, led by Hiakai and Mama, decide to attack Okoki Pā that afternoon, and against the advice of Te Wherowhero set off, and they are about 600 in number. As they make their way along the Mangatiti Gully, they come across the Taranaki Hunuhunu group, who flee, and the chase begins. Pā has Te Hiakai and Mama breaking through the Hunuhunu warriors and making it to Okoki Pā, where Hiakai scales the palisading, stuns the chief with his merry, then carries him out of the Pā. I mean, really? Skinner has the Hunuhunu starting much as I have related. Skinner says that the ambush party is under the command of Rangiwahia, and that it does 4 separate charges into the Waikato warriors. Now I ask myself, why would they charge, withdraw, then charge again? This would give Waikato a recurring chance to regroup, have more warriors join them. In general, this just seems like a terrible tactic. The only logic I could see for this was that it gave those musketeers on the Taranaki side a chance to shoot into Waikato without endangering their own warriors. Anyway, it makes for a more feasible story, and I've gone with it. And now for the droning. A big thank you to those that gave permission to fly over their land. It's most appreciated. Okay, folks, so that's it from me. If you have any comments or local oral history around these events, it would be great to see them in the comments. I look forward to your company again as we see how the rest of the Battle of Motunui plays out. Until then, take it easy, stay safe out there, and catch ya.